Hello everyone and welcome. I'm Sarah Liz and I hope you're excited to make a bunch of ugly sweater cards. This is the Stitched Christmas Sweater die set from Spellbinders, and it's got this sweater in it that is almost the same size as an A2 card. That's an A2 panel there. But here's the thing, I don't stitch at all of any kind. I've tried, it's bad. So we are just gonna make some sweater cards. I'm also using this Christmas bird poinsettia die set. We are going to use the poinsettia on a sweater later, but mostly I'm stealing this Santa hat that fits on the bird. It's teeny tiny and it is awesome. This Santa's Here die set builds like a classic Santa, and we're going to steal his hat too. So here I made a sweater card by folding a piece of cardstock in half, right, and just leaving that fold line under the cut line. Right? And that's one way to do it, but I had to run that through twice. That stitching just is a whole nother layer of something. It's still going to add the stitching to the inside. You can do it like that if you're comfortable with that, but it tends to warp my plates. So I'm going to walk you through how I made a whole bunch of them pretty quickly and a little bit differently. So I have cut 2 pieces using that sweater die. And then I'm using my scoreboard and I just created a strip of cardstock that is 3/4 of an inch because that's right where the sleeves line up. And that way I know I have it straight since the bottom curves a little bit. And then I'm going to score this at 3 3/4 of an inch. I'm being really careful. All those sort of stitch details weaken the cardstock a little bit. So I'm going carefully and gently. And when I go to fold this, I'm going to stick my ruler right along that score line to help me get a really clean crease. So I'm going to fold it kind of both directions and loosen that up. And that will create a hinge for our card. I'm adding glue only above the score line, right? So there it is, just at the very top. And then I'm going to line up my 2 sweaters and glue them together just right at the top by the neckline. Okay. Next, there are little pieces to decorate the sweater. They go on really easily. So I have this little piece that goes around the neck, and then up top you can see the pieces that go around the sleeves. They are not identical. They are slightly shorter towards the inside of the sleeve than the outside of the sleeve. If you mess it up, I don't know that anyone would notice. I'm pretty sure some of mine got messed up before I realized that. But if it matters to you, of note, they are not identical. Okay, and then I'll put this little piece down at the bottom. On the inside of the sweater, I wanted to give myself a place to write a note that wasn't going to have to go over the top of that stitching. So I cut a bunch of circles that are 2.5 inches. A lot of times I'm just cutting them in one of the colors from the sweater, and it fits sort of perfectly right in the center there. You could add another one to the back if you want a place to put your sort of handmade by. Of note, the sweater is symmetrical. So if you wanted to turn this into an ornament, you can put them back to back so that the pretty sides are facing out. That would work too. So I made a whole bunch of sweater cards and now we're going to decorate them. This is using the Plant It Here set, and I'm just stealing a flamingo because that's what everybody needs, is a little Christmas flamingo. This guy comes together super, super quickly. There aren't a whole lot of pieces. It's really just the 2 pieces of the beak and the legs, and then I'm going to add a hat on top. I bought this on super sale, not the warehouse sale, the next big one after that. And so I'm challenging myself to use the dies I either haven't used yet or haven't used in a while as we move into the Christmas season, because you can turn anything into a Christmas element with a Santa hat, right? So here's my flamingo. It's all put together. Off camera later on, I will decide that there's like a little dot for the eye. I'm going to stick a little fine liner pen in there and darken that up, but it didn't occur to me to do that until I was totally done with, you guys, I made 9. I made 9 different ugly sweater cards. We're going to do 5 in this video. But there's probably a second video coming out at some point. Let me know if you want to see more ugly Christmas sweaters. So this little hat is the one we stole from the bird poinsettia die set, and I'm flipping it to go the other direction. So to kind of keep it from having the ugly side of the cardstock sticking out, I'm just pushing on that real hard with my bone folder, and most of that's getting covered up anyway. So I'm very in tune to like the good side of the die, but you can't hardly tell here because I'm going to put the little fur trim and the poofy ball on using the good side of the die. Then I will add that to my flamingo and he's nearly done. So you could leave it like this. You could. But I decided some of these cards needed sentiments. So I made sentiments. This is just the one I was working from. I have prettied it up and I will make this available for you. It will be a free download. All I ask is that if you're going to use my downloads, please subscribe to my channel. And I will try to include instructions on there on how to do this. But essentially, I'm trimming off the edges so you can see the black lines right up at the edges. Okay. And then I'm lining up those little tick marks on the blade of my trimmer. My printer never prints totally straight, so I can't just use the bottom of my trimmer as a guide. So every single time I sort of move this along, I'm lining up the tick mark on one side with, it's really like a full line on the other side because I've also included labels so you know like what card I used it on. This one says Merry Flocking Christmas. And I just printed them all out in white and I'm going to use my alcohol markers to add a little bit of color to some of these. I spread out the 3 words because I didn't want to have to fit that long sentiment clear across my sweater. I wanted to be able to kind of make them all wonky. On the printable, there you'll find them so that they are spread out. But also if you did want to use just Merry Flocking Christmas on one line, that is available too. So I'm giving you options and I'm giving you different sizes. I also wanted to be able to easily mat this onto another layer of cardstock. So I'm busting out all my tricks here, right? I'm using the edge of the finger guard to figure out where I want to line up my cut versus my letters. And then I'm using just the edge of a sticky note to get a straight edge when I cut off the other side of the word. The smallest ones, and I'm trying to include this in the printable in 2 different sizes, but the smaller one fits perfectly on a 1/4 inch strip. So this is a 1/4 inch strip of matte silver cardstock, and I'm just kind of laying it on there so there's a little bit of a border on the top and the bottom, and then I will trim off on either side to finish these up. I'm only going to show the sentiments once, but I wanted to show you kind of what I made and how you can use it. But then as we move through the other cards, some of them won't have sentiments. And some of them, if I do use them, I will just assemble those off camera. So you're not watching the same process over and over. Once I'm looking at something that's like a matte layer, I'm able to eyeball that pretty easily. So that goes a lot quicker. So I'm kind of laying them out. They're a little bit off kilter. I like that. I don't want to have to line things up straight. These are a little like goofy anyway. It just felt like it fit the theme of the sweater. I want to know, if you're making ugly sweater cards, are you going to put sentiments on them? Does it depend on the ugly sweater? I would also love to know, like, what die sets do you have in your stash where you're like, that's it. That's the one that I would love most to put on an ugly sweater, because I'm pretty sure I'm going to make dozens of these cards to send out to my friends for Christmas. It's so funny. I know that the circle on the inside isn't very big and there isn't a lot of room to write, but if it's somebody who needs a long note, I'll add a little extra note. I don't care, right? It's fine. Okay, so this is the Dancin Saint Nick. I bought this on clearance at the end of last Christmas season and had not used him yet. So he's right in there with my like, hey, you've got to use what you've got. There's so many amazing new things coming out for Christmas in July. But I don't want to forget about the things that I already have that I love. So I'm assembling Nick. I'm adding his boots to his feet. And you can see there's a hole in the feet. And we're going to stick a little foam dot in there and they will wiggle side to side. That's what makes him Dancin Saint Nick and not just boring Saint Nick. Then I'm adding 2 strips of glue to his body. One is for the fur trim and one is for his belt. You need to put the fur trim on first because the belt overlaps it very slightly. And I like doing the glue at the same time. Then I have wiggle room at the same time to kind of get everything lined up and exactly where I want it to be. He's got this giant gold belt buckle with an S on it. I want to say that it is symmetrical, or rather that it's the same upside down and right side up, but it might not be. Like, I'm looking at it in editing and it kind of looks like maybe it's upside down, but that might be the kind of Santa that comes to my house. I don't know. I mean, I haven't met him, but he seems a little off kilter to me. Then I am adding the poofy ball and the fur trim to his hat. And then this is his face. I wasn't sure how much of the bottom would be covered by the beard, so I'm just adding it to his ears. And then there's a little piece right above the ears that clearly lines up with the beard. And I will glue that on, and then I'll stick his hat on top. This Santa was just a little bit challenging because in the packaging and all the photos I could find online, you see like the arm, and then he's holding something, and then you see just the hand. So I wasn't really sure how to assemble the hands, right? Because I'm going to have him hold something on one side, but not the other. So I'm adding this little white fur piece to his cuffs, but then I end up adding the hands and ripping the hands off, and then adding them and ripping them off. Poor Saint Nick. Anyway, I like how it turned out, and I tried to edit out most of the, dismemberment of Santa for you. I've added then his head to his body. I can't just glue him straight down. That whole piece is going to be popped up a little bit. And so to add his eyes, I'm putting just a little bit of tape behind it. If it were stickier tape, I would not need to add glue in there, but I think it's micropore tape. So this just seemed a little bit safer. Adding a little glue, adding the eyes in there. If you didn't want to have to fiddle with the little pieces, you could just put a little piece of black cardstock behind his face, and that would work too. I'm using a medium foam dot here. I think they came from Michael's. I've had them for an age, but I'm pretty sure they came from Michael's. So I'm getting that in there just to kind of figure out where pieces are going to go. And now I'm going to start adding his arms just to that little, it looks like a joint, right? Just to that little sort of shoulder joint right up at the top. And once I have his arms on there, I can figure out what am I going to do with the hands? What am I going to do with this present? And so what I am not showing you is that I've also stuck a bunch of other foam back there. Don't do that yet, because now I'm trying to stick the arm underneath the foam. Anyway, wait on the foam. Okay, here are my hands. In the end, I just trimmed these down so there was just enough to glue his little black gloves onto them. So then I could decide what position I wanted the hand in, where, how far I wanted the thumb tilted. There is kind of a hand shape on the end of the arms, but this just seemed easier by the time I got to this point. Okay, so I'm going to wiggle those just a little bit, and then, that's the pieces of Saint Nick. To make it so that my Saint Nick can wiggle and dance, I'm adding foam behind his head, behind his body, and then behind the arms. But I can't add anything to the legs, and I don't want to go too far down on the body, or it's just going to run into the foam tape a whole bunch. So I'm getting all of that kind of lined up. I'm holding on to the legs, and then I'm going to place that all down on my card. At the very end, I'm like, yes, I think I do want this little present. Look at the packaging if you want his hand to kind of go around the present. They have it placed like that, but it was a little bit of an afterthought for me. And then that's my little dancing Santa. I did not add a sentiment to that one. I didn't think it needed it, right? If I had a sweater that could wiggle and dance like that, I would love it. Okay, here's my pirate gnome. This is from the Spellbinders Large Die of the Month for July. It's called Stocking Full of Joy. I have another video I will try to link that has 3 different cards made with this set. It's enormous and I love it. So I've already assembled one candy cane the way it's supposed to be assembled. But to make this is my skull and crossbones, right? To make my crossbones out of candy canes, this one I had to do upside down. So I flipped it over, and then I used a bone folder just to kind of press it and smooth out those edges a little bit. And you'll notice the candy cane is going to look a little wonky. I did not flip over the red stripes of the candy cane for lots of reasons, mostly because it was more work. And I tried it once, and it still was kind of wonky. And quite frankly, we're going to cover most of it up with our gnome. So this works beautifully. To assemble my gnome, it's super simple. I am going to tuck the beard into the hat, and then that kind of tells me where the nose goes. So I will glue the nose right onto the beard, and then there's a little like strip that goes at the top of the hat. You guys, I was trying to figure out how to put a pirate patch on this gnome, but he doesn't have any eyes. So I tucked it under the hat. I tucked it under this little black, it doesn't, I don't know. What would you guys do? Does he need a pirate patch? And if so, where do you put it? Then I flipped it over and just ran my glue bottle right underneath the beard to secure everything together. So now we have all our die cuts assembled and we can start putting our card together. I am just laying out my candy canes to figure out kind of what angle I want them at, and then I will keep the bottom one on there and just run the tip of my glue bottle underneath it to make sure that it doesn't move. And then I'll put the other one just kind of mirroring that one. Of note, you're going to want to go a little easy on your glue as you're assembling these things because you have all those stitched details in there, and the glue, if it takes a lot, but if you put a ton of glue on there, it could seep through the stitched detail. Just be aware. I added a little bit of foam. It's the 1mm foam squares from Spellbinders underneath parts of that gnome, just because there was this big hump in the middle from the two candy canes, just to even that out. And then my sentiment says, ho, 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 Merry Christmas, which I thought was hilarious. So we're going to add that to the very bottom of our card, and that will finish up our pirate gnome Christmas card. I mean, come on. All right. You know somebody that will wear this huge, I'm going to call it an ugly poinsettia sweater, even though the poinsettia is beautiful, you guys. This is from the same set where we stole the teeny tiny Santa hat. It comes together really beautifully. There's so many pieces in here and you can make so many different things. So I glued together just 2 layers of the poinsettia itself, and then I've cut the center from some gold shimmer cardstock. It's not really glitter, it's not really foil, so it's pretty subtle, right? Kind of matte. And I'm going to layer on the background piece and then my berries. You could do the background piece in white, and then the centers of those berries that are cut out will sort of show through a little bit more, but I didn't think of it at the time. Then I've used some gaudy glitter cardstock. I love it, actually. I think it's really beautiful. 2 shades of green glitter cardstock, and I've just kind of laid everything out on my card. I'm going to add some glue to the back of one set of leaves and the poinsettia. I'm going to get that kind of lined up where I want it, and then I'm going to futz with the other 2 leaves while the glue is still wet, right? I think the biggest challenge on this card for me was trying to get everything laid down at the same time. It was late, you guys. I had been working on designing these all day, and then my kids got home and they were totally crazy. And so I think I was up until 11:30 trying to film these. My bedtime is like 9:30. So it didn't occur to me to try press and seal or my sticky grid or whatever. That would have worked really well here. I had a Merry Christmas sentiment all ready to go for this one, but actually decided not to. I think just the enormous, massive poinsettia on a sweater is pretty funny. I'm pretty sure this card is going to my sister. We're going to use the kitty cats. This is a really old die set. And then this is the Stupendous Kitty Hugs that has this massive ball of yarn. And then the holiday decorations, there are some snowflakes in there, and we're going to use those too. My sister is a cat lady. I mean, she only has 1 cat, but she's still a cat lady. Like, she just is. Nothing against cats. We had several. Okay, so there are no layered die cuts on here. None. This is like, anybody can make this card, for sure. I am just going to lay down my 3 snowflakes. All 3 of these come from that same holiday decorations die set, and I love them. I'm going to add my glue on the back, and I just tap it off on the back of my hand to make sure that I'm not going to end up with like globs of glue oozing out onto my card. And I'm going to scatter those in sort of a triangle formation, right? That seemed to fit really nicely with my 2 images. I think I love most about this one that ball of yarn is from some really bright, shiny pink foil cardstock. Like that's what makes it holiday to me. So I'm going to add my ball of yarn on one side and sort of offset that. and I'll overlap my cat. I cut the cat out of some glossy black cardstock. Like, this is how I make things fancy, right? I'm like, let's just find a slightly fancy cardstock and let that elevate the design a little bit. The yarn is like nearly the same size as the cat, you guys. Okay, here's my teeny tiny Santa hat again, and I've pressed it out because it's going backwards. I've cut my fur trim and my poofy ball out of some white glitter cardstock. Again, it's from Michaels, right? As often as I can, glitter cardstock from Michaels. And those will go the normal direction. I didn't have to press those out at all. And I'm going to add that onto my cat. I ended up covering up both of the ears, and I hemmed and hawed about that. I don't know, but he's a goofy little cat. Why not? My sentiment for this card says meowy Christmas, and I tried it a couple of places, but sort of on all of these cards, I liked it best when the sentiment was sort of integrated into the card itself, sort of overlapping the images, even though that feels really brave to me. I don't know. What do you think? So that will finish up our cat card. Absolutely, it's for my sister. I would love to know which of these cards you like the best, and if you have supplies that you think you might turn into ugly sweater cards. If you're interested in the free download with all of the sentiments that I used and instructions on how to use them, all I ask is that you subscribe to my channel. Then click more or show more below the video. You'll find all of the supplies that I used, and at the very bottom you'll find a link to those sentiments so you can make your very own ugly Christmas cards. Thank you for spending this time with me, and I will see you next time.